Good afternoon. I'd like to call to the meeting of the James City Service Authority Board of Directors, regular meeting to order. Mr. Powell, please.
Mr. Hippel.
Here.
Ms. Larson.
Here.
Ms. McGlennon.
Here.
Mr. Eisenhower.
Here.
Ms. Knoll.
Here. Board discussions, fiscal year 2026 budget discussion. Mr. Powell, please.
Just here to, as a follow-up to the public hearing 2 weeks ago, to answer any questions you might have on the proposed budget. As a reminder, the proposed rates are based on the 5-year rate study that was just recently completed. And also as a reminder, I did propose one amendment to the budget since it was published, which was to appropriate $107,000 for the purposes of funding the retirement health program. Otherwise, as I said, I'd be happy to answer any questions you have on the proposed budget.
Anybody have any questions?
I just think you've done a good job of explaining what the needs are and why you need to set the rates at what you have, and I appreciate the detail to which you went into.
It's important also to recognize that, a lot of our infrastructure is aging quite rapidly, and it's important for us not to be in a position of having to scramble to find the adequate funding to maintain that system. So I think it's a very, very pragmatic way to approach this. And also just to recognize that we continue to have exceptionally low rates compared to other communities in the Hampton Roads area.
Yeah, I looked in the paper in Chesapeake, and everybody's raising their water rates,
Right.
and thank God it's not us. So we appreciate that. Okay, thank you. I have an
Before you adjourn, if I could just quickly remind
Yes.
you, the quarterly lunch, recognition lunch is tomorrow at 11:30 at Chickahominy Riverfront Park. So I know several of you have RSVP'd. I know, Mr. Eisenhower, you cannot attend, but just a quick reminder. So thank you.
So I looked for a motion to adjourn
So
to
moved.
5 p.m. on May 13th. So moved.
All right, Mr. Hippel,
Aye.
Mr. McGlennon,
Aye.
Mr. Eisenhower,
Aye.
and Ms. Knoll.
Aye.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Powell.
Go ahead and call this call to order this meeting of the James City County Board of Supervisors for a business meeting. Mr. Stevens, call the roll, please.
Mr. Hippel?
Here.
Ms. Knoll?
Here.
Mr. McGlennon?
Here.
Mr. Eisenhower?
Here. Okay. We're going to begin with the presentations, and our first presentation is a proclamation for Fair Housing Month, and I will present that. I'm going to read from here, and then we will come down and have a presentation of the proclamation and take a couple of pictures. So I guess we have our staff ready for that. Okay, this is a proclamation, James City County Fair Housing Month, April 2025. Whereas the Fair Housing Act, enacted on April 11, 1968, prohibits discrimination in housing based on race, color, religion, sex, familial status, national origin, and disability, affirming the fundamental right to equal housing opportunity for all. And whereas the James City County remains committed to upholding the mission of the Fair Housing Act by fostering inclusive communities that strengthen social, economic, and environmental well-being through diversity. And whereas, despite decades of progress, housing discrimination persists, and systemic barriers continue to challenge equitable access to housing in our nation and local communities. And whereas acts of housing discrimination undermine the principles of fairness and dignity, and James City County rejects such practices as incompatible with our shared values. And whereas public and private collaboration is essential to advance fair housing education, enforcement, and advocacy, ensuring all residents and prospective residents can thrive in neighborhoods of their choice. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed that I, Chairman of the Board of Supervisors of James City County, Virginia, hereby proclaim April 2025 as Fair Housing Month and call upon residents, businesses, and community organizations to promote awareness of the fair housing rights and responsibilities through educational initiatives and outreach, to advocate for policies that dismantle discriminatory barriers and expand equitable access to housing, and celebrate the diversity of our community as a cornerstone of its strength and vitality. In witness whereof, I have hereunto set my hand and caused the seal of the county of James City, Virginia, to be affixed this 22nd day of April 2025. And I've signed it, and we'll come do the presentation. Okay, our second presentation is by Ms. Charvalla West, CEO of United Way of the Virginia Peninsula. Welcome, Charvalla.
Thank you all so much for having me today. I am the president and CEO of United Way of the Virginia Peninsula. It's a tremendous pleasure to be here and provide an update to you today. As a longtime resident of the county, I am so grateful for all the ways you've supported our United Way and our partners within the nonprofit sector to make change that matters for our workforce, for our children, and for those who need help. And personally, I have reaped the benefits of your hard work, your stewardship, and your leadership. So thank you very much for your service. In the last 8 years, our United Way has grown our impact, and we've risen quickly and effectively to answer the call from our community, to keep families housed, to keep individuals working, and to help give our children the best chance at success now and in the future. Since 2017, following our Pathways Out of Poverty collective impact agenda, the United Way and our partners have been focused on a population that we refer to as ALICE, Asset Limited, Income Constrained Employed, those who are working, sometimes multiple jobs, but still living paycheck to paycheck. ALICE households often earn too much for government-funded programs, but not enough to save, to own a home, or to recover from the unexpected, like a missed shift, or the steady rise of costs. ALICE cares for and teaches our children. ALICE is the engine behind travel and tourism. ALICE takes care of the sick and the elderly. ALICE ensures that our local economy flourishes, but ALICE needs support. On the Virginia Peninsula, 41% of households are experiencing poverty at ALICE or below. In James City County, 34% of households are experiencing scarcity, according to our last reported data. While James City County residents are experiencing poverty at a lesser extent than neighboring localities, we know that the impacts know no borders, as many in our region may live in one locality and work in another. While United Way has served this community for more than 80 years, our United Way looks a little different now than we did even in the last several years. Our footprint has grown to include 9 cities and counties. Our impact areas and goals have been better defined, and our commitment to this community has been demonstrated not only in our efforts, but in the outcomes of our collective impact. United Way of the Virginia Peninsula is proud to be the convener, the backbone that brings government, corporate, nonprofit, and individual resources together for the common good. We mobilize financial, in-kind, and volunteer resources to support the community. Sorry, thank you. We help ensure that those in need have access to the resources available in our community through the Community Assistance Network and our Eviction Reduction Pilot. And we bring multi-sector partners and stakeholders together to create lasting change. We believe that United is the way to financial security, a healthy community, youth opportunity, and community resilience. You're most likely familiar with our traditional role of raising funds through corporate giving and employee contributions. We are still the community's fundraiser, making it easy for anyone to give what they can to make our community better. James City County has been a wonderful partner with our United Way for many years, giving county employees the opportunity to participate in giving through one-time gifts or payroll deductions. These funds go 100% to our community and allow us to provide much-needed funding to 38 nonprofit organizations who have been vetted by the community and are what we call certified to receive those gifts. Of the 38 organizations listed here, I'm sure you recognize some of the names, like the ARC or Avalon or Child Development Resources. In the last year, 25 of our certified partner agencies provided services to 24,517 county residents. Through gifts from workplace campaigns, donor-designated contributions, and collaborative grants, we're projecting that our United Way will mobilize more than $5 million this year, supporting more than 140 organizations. Modeled after the success we saw here in the greater Williamsburg area for more than 20 years at what used to be the Community Resource Center, and with Alice as our priority, in 2021, United Way launched the Community Assistance Network, which we call CAN, a centralized advocacy and referral service that mobilizes the power of approximately 150 partners, faith groups, charitable organizations, human services agencies, and others to provide outcome-based referrals for anyone on the peninsula facing a need. CAN provides one phone number for our entire region to access basic needs, financial assistance, and stabilization support. Since CAN's inception through the end of 2024, more than 12,000 people have gotten help to keep a roof over their heads, to have childcare or transportation so they can keep showing up to work, and to help fill the gaps when their paychecks don't stretch quite far enough. So far in 2025, CAN has helped over 200 county residents with nearly 250 outcome-based referrals, mobilizing over $73,000 in assistance. As the holiday season came to an end and we all await the business of spring and summer tourism, we've seen increase in call volume over the last few months, serving 3 times as many county residents in March than we did in January. For as long as I can recall, James City County has supported our United Way through an annual grant. The funds we receive allow us to provide this service in partnership with various organizations, but we're especially grateful for our partners at James City County Social Services and the housing team. Together, we work to ensure that those who don't qualify for what we call mainstream benefits through government-funded programs can still get the support and help they need to not only survive, but thrive. We appreciate so much the support through the grant and through partnerships. With the Community Assistance Network as the foundation, we've spent the last 4 years working to systematically and efficiently reduce evictions in our community. In 2020, we launched the Peninsula's first ever eviction reduction pilot, funded primarily by the state through the Department of Housing and Community Development. United Way of the Virginia Peninsula has been a leading participant in the state's efforts to make evictions rare, brief, and humane when they happen. As the highest funded grantee supporting all of the Virginia Peninsula, this work has been so important to our workforce and economic goals, our educational outcomes, and to the overall quality of life for citizens who call this region home. State funds are braided alongside local, public, and private funds and other supportive services. These resources aren't held exclusively by United Way, but we mobilize them quickly throughout the community to vetted organizations and agencies on the front lines of addressing housing instability, workforce development, and supporting households. Along with our collaborative eviction court navigation services that help ensure tenants and landlords are given every opportunity to restore their agreements and bring landlords whole, and our facilitated conversations and collaborations, we've seen measurable impact in our community's efforts to reduce evictions. Thanks to partnerships with our judges and sheriffs, we know better today what evictions look like beyond the filing. And we've seen significant decreases almost in every locality over the last year and a half. The number of landlord filings has decreased by 20% in the last 6 quarters, and that's the top blue line. And the number of executed lockouts continues to trend down, the red line underneath. We recognize that we can't account for every filing or every transition from a filing to what that family chooses next, but this data is a good indication of the effectiveness of our community's interventions and our community-wide approach to what is a national issue. In Williamsburg, James City County specifically, while the volume of unlawful detainer filings and executed evictions ebbs and flows, the chances of a household being locked out by a sheriff after a filing is only about 14%. and one of the lowest in the region. Again, we can't know how many households leave on their own or how many get assistance, but our court navigator is able to provide direct referrals for community resources, legal representation, and help landlords and tenants navigate the proceedings together, ultimately diminishing the burden on the system and the loss to landlords. Thanks to the position of our United Way and the Community Assistance Network, we can keep our ears to the ground and engage our community to anticipate the trends and emerging needs. Thanks to the support of the Bernadine Franciscan Sisters Foundation, we've been able to extend our hours of service to again give more time and accessibility to those who are working during the day but may still need some assistance to get by. We're enhancing our response when housing loss is imminent, particularly for families with children, knowing that the presence of children is one of the highest indicators of eviction. We can help plan for post-eviction transitions so that even still, when that child gets off the bus, he or she has a safe place to do homework, to have dinner, and to prepare for the next school day. And we have to make systemic adjustments to how we deliver these services so that we're equipping and supporting the long-term sustainability of families to care for themselves and not just responding to recurring crises. The Virginia Peninsula community has been setting a standard across the state for what multi-sector collective models can accomplish, and the United Way of the Virginia Peninsula is proud to be a part and to have the support of our local government leaders. We know that the collective impact model works and that the United Way is poised to meet our community's emerging needs as the backbone for collaborative solutions. We applied the collective impact model as we focused on children and young adults. In 2023, we launched the Peninsula Youth Collaborative, a collaboration of school-based nonprofit and other programs serving children and young people in our area. While the Youth Collaborative is still in its infancy, the power of the collective has been proven. Shortly after it was formed, we were called on by our partners at Busch Gardens Williamsburg to help fill off-season hiring needs. Think Hollow Scream, Christmas Town, that kind of thing. In partnership, we piloted the Youth Employment Pilot, and 130 young people ages 16 to 24 have not only been employed by Busch Gardens, but received free reliable transportation to and from Newport News to every working shift. The Peninsula Youth Collaborative includes nearly 70 organizations and programs serving children and young adults on the peninsula, and about half of them offer some version of a mentorship program, whether it's in school or at home engagement, or whether it's specific to a certain demographic. What each of these organizations has in common is a wait list, the overwhelming need of caring adults to spend quality time with our children. We believe that through our engagement with local business and our role as a community-wide volunteer facilitator, plus the formation of the Peninsula Youth Collaborative, we can mobilize the caring power of people to improve social and educational outcomes for our children, equipping the workforce for tomorrow. United is the way to ensure our kids have access to positive adult role models and supportive mentors. For more than 80 years, United Way has served the Virginia Peninsula, mobilizing support from our business community, advocating for the less fortunate, and providing funding and expanding the capacity of our nonprofit sector to meet the complex and challenging needs of those experiencing poverty. This applies also in times of disaster and emergency. Please know that we stand ready to help share the message of safety, mobilize critical resources, and to move our community to action when it's needed most. We might look a little different today than we did when we first started as a community chest helping the jobless, but our purpose and our vision remain to be the connector so that every person, whether they have a need or something to give, can get connected through United Way. We envision a community in which every person can care for themselves and their families and maybe even help their neighbor. And when we can do that, together, our ability to give help and hope becomes infinite. Thank you very much for allowing me to share today on behalf of the United Way, on behalf of our partner agencies and those we serve. Thank you to the James City County Department of Social Services and their housing team. They've been amazing collaborators working with our advocates through the Community Assistance Network to help keep people housed and fed. And thank you very much to county employees for your support through the annual campaign. Thank you all for serving and for leading our community and for being advocates for Alice. Happy to answer any questions.
Any questions?
I just would comment on, first of all, you're just do a great job with communication, sending out emails that and letting us know what's happening in the community. I appreciate that. I've been down to your office for an event. And I think one of the things that I am most impressed with is the Community Assistance Network. Just having one number that people can call and get, and obviously it sounds as though it's been very busy to have, did you say twice the number of calls in March that were in January? So, so I appreciate that very much. And you and your team are just doing an excellent job. And
you.
so, and I want to say Teresa Said, who is deputy clerk to this board, believe she headed up our United Way campaign here at the county this year. So I want to give her a shout out as well for doing that. So
Done such a great job. We are so grateful.
thank you.
Thank you.
Can I say, we're especially pleased to know that county resident and a resident of the Roberts District
I knew he'd get that in there.
is performing such a vital role in the community. And I'll echo what Supervisor Larson said about the communication, which has been just outstanding to keep people informed of what's going on. But that communication also matches with collaboration, and you really do such a marvelous job in bringing people together to provide whatever assets they can to address real issues that people face every day.
Thank you.
So I think that's just great. And I would guess that you've probably recently, or maybe not quite, reached your first year of leadership. Is that right?
From interim, yes, I'm 1 year in, yes.
Yes, great. So you've already made a big impact, and we look forward to seeing even more and contributing to that as well.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for sharing this with us. Okay, next, VDOT quarterly update. Rossi Carroll, our VDOT Williamsburg Residency Administrator.
Thank you, Chairman Eisenhower, other distinguished members of the board. I'm here to give the first quarter quarterly transportation update for VDOT. Maintenance accomplishments from January 1st to March 31st. We've completed 567 of 647 work orders, maintenance work orders, which is an 87.6% completion. Of those work orders, there has been 449 generated from the public, and the other 198 were generated from VDOT internally. We also, as part of that, if you look through the stats, there's a lot of pothole patching in that quarter. Also, we did respond to 4 snow events that quarter, which were a couple of them fairly significant for the area. Got some pretty good feedback from our response from that as well. Some current projects, we have guardrail hits contract going on. They've completed 17 of 17 hits. We have the Croker Road widening project that is underway. Continue to monitor settlement there at the bridges or the abutments, doing some storm drain work, and we've constructed temporary station, or getting ready to construct temporary station at the Norwich Apartment Access Road. We also have the Jamestown Transfer Bridge hydraulic lift system going on. They finished one side and have moved to the other, and that work is going on pretty good. We also have started the mowing, the mowing and litter removal contract for the summer. The first mow was primary only, and that started the 2nd of this month, and the next full cycle will be May 1st, and that will include secondary, primary, and litter removal on both. Some completed projects and closeout, Richmond Road Bike Path, plant mix schedule from last year, the Route 60, between Route 30 and New Kent Line, the PM5M 24 FDR, the Skiss Creek Connector, Long Hill Road widening, removal of 8 timber dolphins, and 199 slope failure, soil nail stabilization, which we just completed a few weeks ago. And what we did there, we had some slope failures there. We put some soil nails, did some erosion control measures, repatched the curb and put up new guardrail. So that's complete. Some future projects, we have the Smart Scale Long Hill Road Shared Use Path. That project award date, anticipated award date is 4/5/27. We have the Airport, Moortown Road, and Richmond Road improvements. That project's anticipated award is July 8/30. Jamestown High School Sidewalk Crosswalk. That looks about December 29/27. And then we have the Route 5, 614, and the Route 30, 746, 2 separate projects, but both of them are no lefts. They are fully funded in the secondary 6-year plan. Y'all voted on that earlier this month. And we have Rev Share Project, Centerville, Jolly Pond Signal Installation. That is looking at to go to award November of 2025. And we have the Pocahontas Trail widening and complete street, phase 1, which we just had a public hearing on that. That looks to go to award 3/29/28. And then we have the Route 60 roller compacted concrete overlay, and that is from Anderson's Corner to the New Kent line. That is on its 3rd advertisement. So the letting date for that is May the 28th. So hopefully we get better set of bids for that. And then we have Pinedale Road cross drain replacement. That is a jack and bore project. We've awarded the contract, but we're still waiting for the environmental permits to be approved. We do have 2 schedules, plant mix schedules in the county this year. PM5E 25. That pretty much does all the roads in Rolling Woods. And we also have a PR5R, which is a 14th month schedule. So you say 14-month schedule. So what that allows the contractor to, he can either do the work this summer, or if a lot of work is around, it can roll into the beginning of the next summer. But that contract includes Kings Point subdivision, and it also includes Monticello Woods, the front phase. We do have some bridge work scheduled for April and May. Route 60 over the CSX there in Toano doing some deck patching. Route 189 over Chisel Run, ordinary culvert maintenance there. Monticello over Powhatan Creek. We got some ordinary ditch deck maintenance to do there, and then Route 601 over I-64 deck patching there as well. FY25 county safety funds. We did Penzance and Olive Drive pipelining and repair. That's complete. Lake Powell Forest sidewalk repairs. That's complete. Renfield Drive concrete ditch repairs. That's complete. And we have about 17,000 left that we're going to try to do some work down at Cranston's Mill Pond. Some recommendations, short-term recommendations for the raising elevations. Some traffic studies that were done in this quarter. Lane assignment review for Long Hill Road, there where it comes down from 199 at Depew and Long Hill Split. We've reviewed that before, but it was a concern. There was no recommendations of any changes there. We did replace some existing signs with newer signs, but other than that, it stayed the same. Intersection review at Route 11, Evergreen Way at John Rolfe Lane. Based on the review, recommended installing a stop bar, install 25-foot of double yellow center line, and we replaced the existing stop sign. And then we did an intersection safety review at Homicene Parkway and Jamestown Road, and there was no recommendations to install any additional traffic control devices or right turn restrictions. And that was really the concern, is people making a right off 199 onto Jamestown and sight distance with people pulling out of, I guess, the apartment complex or the businesses there. We do have some studies underway. One of them is a RSA, a roadway safety analysis of Route 30, Old Stage Road from, might as well just say from Stonehouse all the way to Barnesville. So it's in 2 different districts. We're working together on this. We have a consultant that is tasked to do the legwork on that, but that is just kicking off with a task order. And then we have project pipeline study, which we'll have a kickoff on that soon. That's Centerville Road and Richmond Road. Centerville from News out to Richmond, and the Richmond Road intersection from like 199 through Lightfoot. And then we have existing pipeline study that's been going on for a little while, is the Route 199 through John Tyler, Jamestown, and Brookwood Roads. Our land use section's been fairly busy this quarter. We've reviewed 26 sets of plans in the county. We've issued 102 permits, and we've closed 34 of those. And I'd like to conclude my presentation with saying that this week is National Work Zone Awareness Week. It is April 21st through the 25th, and the title is Respect the Zone so we all can get home. So I ask that you please pay attention when going through work zones. Slow down, increase your distance, and hopefully everybody will be safe. And that concludes my report.
Hey, questions for Mr. Carroll?
Yeah, thank you. On the Croker Road intersection, that one, during that big rain event.
Yes.
The water washed over and
You've
y'all.
seen it since they did
Yeah,
the
you
work?
got right on it and fixed that, so I appreciate that very much.
Good.
Thank you, sir. That's all.
I just was going to comment on the Centerville Road where I think you had to fix some pavement, and then we had a huge rain event and flooding.
Yes. That's
And
natural for that area.
yeah, and there's that big tree that just kind of hanging there, but it seems like it's getting closer to the road. And is that National Park Service?
I'll look at it. There
Property.
was one that fell in that
That's the one
bottom.
I'm talking about. It just seems like, especially with the rain event, it just seemed to push a little closer.
Okay.
But
We'll look at it.
with the rain event, was there any harm to the newly fixed pavement?
There wasn't. That was one of the things we wanted to check. What we did, we dug down there and reset 2 joints of those pipe and then repatched it. What had happened, they had fallen off. So you were getting some voids there and some sloughing. Fixed that, went through, we had a big rain event, had a high water. When it went down, everything looked perfect. So
Okay.
it had moved a bit.
All right, thank you.
I just wanted to thank you for a couple of different things. One, I thought the public hearing on Pocahontas Trail widening was really well attended and a very productive kind of session. So I appreciate the hard work that went into putting that together. And I think the citizens who were there all expressed their gratitude for the opportunity to comment on it as well. I'm delighted to hear that the plant mix for Rolling Woods is going ahead, and that the other plant mix that includes Kings Point is moving ahead as well. Thank you very much for that. I usually have given you something to an itch I've got that I ask you to scratch, and one of those itches came up this spring in relation to the Vineyards neighborhood. And by the time I got to asking you to do something about it, it had already been done. So I really do appreciate the conclusion of that situation for a homeowner who was experiencing some serious erosion problems in their front yard. And finally, I just wondered if you have any kind of schedule on the Laurel Lane safe routes to school?
I do not.
Okay. Maybe I'll drop you an email and
Yeah.
ask.
Do.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I only had 2 issues. up in my district. One is, I think I mentioned before, where they've repaved the entrance onto 199 from Long Hill, headed back up toward Route 60. It's beautiful, and you get down to the bottom, and then it ends. And the pavement there, I know, needs to have some work done, but apparently we've gotten a couple of washouts or whatever. It looks like it's pretty good sized potholes. So if you could take another look at that to try, I know it's maybe not something you just do in an interim to smooth it until you finally get around to getting that thing fixed.
Yeah, it's delaminated,
Yeah.
but that's gonna be included in the main line. So
Okay.
The ramp was done, there's two different sections of pavement. The delamination was part of the main line on 199, so.
The other one was on News Road. As you come out of Firestone from Ford's Colony and head up toward Monticello, as you cross the creek there, as you come up, we got a couple of really good sized potholes developed there. So if you could take a look at those for interim, 'cause aside from that, the rest of the road's pretty good. But this is right in the rut of the travel lane.
It's certainly that season, so,
Yep.
and like I said, I'll throw this out here too. If anybody sees any potholes, just call the customer service center. We'll get it scheduled and get it fixed. But appreciate you bringing those
Okay.
to my attention.
No other questions for Ms. Ross, Ms. Carroll? Okay, thank you. We'll see you next quarter.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, as we get ready to proceed, I will mention that Ms. Null had to leave the meeting because of a personal emergency, so we will be continuing with the four of us. We go to the consent calendar. Today's consent calendar consists of the following items: contract award, $349,329, War Hill Sports Complex playground replacement. Number two, contract award, $285,000, Urban Area Security Initiative Command Trailer. And number three, minutes adoption. I'll look to the board
I'll
for,
move the consent.
okay, we have a motion for the consent. Mr. Stevens, call the roll, please.
Mr. Hippel.
Aye.
Ms. Larson.
Aye.
Mr. McGlinnan. Mr. Eisenhower.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Okay. We move to board considerations. Number one is contract award, $1,118,941, replacement fire pumper. Chief Ash will give us the staff presentation.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, members of the board. Before you this afternoon is a resolution to award a contract for the replacement of a fire pumper. Just for a little bit of a history on these, we've worked with Fleet for a number of years for apparatus replacement plan, and we've replaced these to where they are in frontline service for about 10 to 12 years. Then they move into reserve, so they fill in if units are out of service for maintenance, and they're replaced by the 20-year mark, which is consistent with national standards. This particular one is going to be a replaced, most likely will go to Station 5, which is located on Monticello Avenue. The issue we have here is the current production timelines are about 4 years. So this one is quoted at replacement of 49 months from the placing the order. So we've seen those increasing production times over the last few years, but certainly weren't expecting 48 months, but that's where we're at. So I just wanted to point that out as part of this.
Get it now before the price goes up.
So we've been working on a couple design changes, but it'll be pretty much consistent with our other trucks. We have one in production now that we will receive in around the June or July timeframe, and this will be consistent with that. There was another expected price increase in May, so awarding this now will get us ahead of that price increase.
All right, any questions?
Move the
Okay,
motion.
we have a motion. Mr. Stevens, call the roll.
Mr. McGlinnan.
Aye.
Ms. Larson.
Aye.
Mr. Hippel. Aye. Mr. Eisenhower.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you, Chief. Okay, number two, contract award, $2,197,000, James City County Recreation Center Pool Renovation Project. Mark Abbott will give the staff presentation. Mr. Abbott?
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Mr. Stevens. If approved, starting June 1st, 2025, the Recreation Center pool area will undergo a major renovation aimed at improving functionality, accessibility, and aesthetics. The project includes demolition and the construction of 2 new offices and a storage area. Interior upgrades will feature epoxy flooring and walls, new fabric ductwork, updated lighting, ceiling painting, and the installation of new showers. The renovation will also include the replacement of exterior glazing, resurfacing of the pool, the application of new white coating. In addition, ADA upgrades will be made to ensure improved accessibility for all users. The project is scheduled to be substantially complete by November 23rd, 2025. While this type and length of renovation is never convenient, it was timed to coincide with the summer months so patrons who swim will have outdoor pools options. Recreation Center staff are working to ensure swimming times at the 757 facility in addition to William & Mary. In addition, there will be times when swimming lanes and swimming lessons will be available at Upper County Park Pool. The center will also be freezing passes for those who prefer to wait until the renovations are completed. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, could you repeat again, when the project starts and when it completes?
June 1st of this year, 2025, to be completed November 23rd of this year, 2025.
Pretty aggressive schedule, so,
Yes, sir.
okay, great. Any questions?
I just had a question. The footprint of the pool itself is going to be the same, is that right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so I was kind of curious about that as well. If there's no way to probably dig deeper because that pool cannot be used by our high school swimmers truly because they can't dive, right, due to the depth.
Correct.
So, but that would probably be a little bit more extensive of a renovation.
Just a
Gotta
little
bring
bit.
up backhoe in there. So it's great that we're doing, and that is a very aggressive timeline. You feel confident that can be done, but there will be some months where patrons will not probably be able to swim because November. Kids swim outside, but I don't know so much about adults, but
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. I think with the weather, you're looking at least probably a month and a half to 2 months where outdoor pools will be a little more difficult. I do know that the rec staff is looking to maybe keep some pools open a little longer than typical because of this. That will all be addressed, to the public when scheduled.
and you'll be overseeing this?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Okay, any other questions? I'll look to the board for a motion.
I'll move the motion.
Okay, we have a motion. Mr. Stevens, please call the roll.
Mr. McGlinnan.
Aye.
Ms. Larson.
Aye.
Mr. Hippel.
Aye.
Mr. Eisenhower.
Aye. Okay. Moving right along to page 2. Item 3 for board considerations is a meeting calendar amendment to add Fords Colony Town Hall meeting on May 20th, 2025 at 6:30 PM at the Fords Colony Swim and Tennis Club, St. Andrews Drive in Williamsburg, Virginia. And this is because we have 3 districts covering part of Fords Colony. So Mr. Hippel and Ms. Larson and I will all be there for that meeting, but we wanted to formally add that to our calendar. I'd look for a motion to approve that.
Motion for approval?
Okay, we have a motion. Mr. Stevens, call the roll.
Mr. Hippel.
Aye.
Mr. McGlinnan.
Aye.
Ms. Larson.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, board discussions. We are now down to number 1, fiscal year 2026 budget. Mr. Stevens.
Yes, sir. Mr. McGlinnan, Mr. Eisenhower, members of the board, I will invite Cheryl Holland to come forward as I introduce this. We really were trying to provide a brief summary of our budget. We've talked about it several times, but just for a refresher for you and those that may be watching, just a brief overview of our budget. We had a few questions we wanted to answer for you. And then as you're aware, we have received a number of emails related to school funding. And so we have responded or worked to respond to most of those. And we do have one of the questions related to school funding. So we'll talk about that more in a minute. So with that, I'll turn it over to Ms. Holland.
Thank you. Chairman, members of the board, good afternoon. I'm Cheryl Holland. I'm the budget manager for the county, and today I'll begin our presentation and then turn things over to Mr. Stevens. And also, Ms. McCarthy and I will both be here to continue to answer any questions that you may have on this. To start off, a few highlights on the proposed budget. The county has several funds, and the total of $389.5 million on that first line reflects the total FY26 proposed budget for all funds, including our capital fund. For the general fund, which covers the county's main operations, the FY26 proposed budget is $262.7 million. This is an increase of approximately $7.3 million, or 2.9% above the FY25 adopted budget. The proposed budget for general fund excludes $11.4 million of requests received that could not be funded within the constraints of the budget. The real estate tax rate is recommended to remain at the current rate of 83 cents per $100 of assessed value, and the only proposed fee increases are for certain fine arts classes in Parks and Recreation, where instructor and equipment costs have gone up, and the ambulance transport service rate, which we align with Medicare. There is an increase in the transfer to debt service to help finance certain capital projects, including the school's preschool space, the general services building, and the new government center. There's also an increase in the county's contribution to Williamsburg-James City County Schools of $2.8 million, or 2.9% above FY25, and you can see that the contribution to the schools is increasing at the same rate as the general fund's overall budget increase. In addition, there's a 3% raise proposed for staff on July 1, 2025, and a potential 1% raise on January 1st, 2026. That 1% is contingent upon an evaluation of the county's budget to actual performance at that time. Regarding new personnel, there are 4 new FTEs proposed in the general fund, 1 new FTE proposed in the county social services fund, and a few other personnel adjustments. Now, the next 2 slides focus on the county's general fund, which is again the main operating fund. General property taxes include real estate and personal property taxes, which at 71% is the main revenue source for operations. FY 2026 is a non-reassessment year, and there are no changes to the tax rates proposed. Other local taxes is the category where sales, meals, and lodging tax reside. The county also receives some revenue from the state, mainly in the form of the Personal Property Tax Relief Block Grant and also support for the constitutional offices. And that includes the Treasurer's Office, Commissioner of the Revenue, Commonwealth Attorney, Clerk of Court, and our Sheriff's Department. These offices are heavily subsidized by the county. The other category includes charges for services such as ambulance transport, recycling, and parks and recreation programs. The increase here is primarily due to, again, the medic transport fees, which, as mentioned, are aligned with the Medicare reimbursement rate. On the expenditure side, this slide shows the FY26 proposed amounts by department, and the total agrees to total revenue, thereby resulting in a balanced budget. As you can see, public safety and the contribution to the schools are the biggest components of the county's budget, representing $165.4 million, or 60% of the total budget. Shifting gears to the Capital Projects Fund, the county has a 5-year capital improvement program. FY 2026 is the only year appropriated for spending, with the other 4 years laid out as a plan to assist with future budgets. Significant county projects for next year include a continuation of funding for the new government center and the general services building, as well as funding for a 3rd library. The main projects for the school division include a continuation of funding for preschool space, HVAC replacement at Matoka Elementary, the purchase of school buses, and security enhancements and infrastructure repairs. And with that overview of significant funds and activity in the proposed budget, I'll turn the presentation over to Mr. Stevens.
Thank you, Ms. Holland. Any questions about our proposed budget? I think you've heard it a few times. All right, we'll give you a chance. I would invite Ms. McCarthy to come to the podium, as she and I are going to, I guess, tag team on the responses to some questions, and she won't have to jump and run up. So we did have a couple questions submitted, one related to meals taxes and emission taxes, and so we decided that really showing you all of our taxing ability, or your taxing ability, where we are, what's allowable, and what we might suggest, probably not in this year, but in a future year's budget. And so you do have the real property tax. Again, that is a penny on the tax rate is about $1.6 million. So you have that authority with the tax credit expiring, or at least not in the proposed budget. We were not recommending that. You could change the personal property tax rate, but I think we're in a pretty good place relative to other communities for that. Lodging tax, 5% maximum, and the $2 per room night charge, and we are at that. So we cannot raise that any further. That is our current authorization. Sales tax, we don't have the authority to increase that beyond what the legislature has provided. And then admission tax, while most counties can impose this tax, James City and York County cannot. And that may be something that you'll want to talk about through the legislative process. Is that worth trying to get authority for that in a future year? But as of today, related to the 1% historic triangle sales tax, you do not have the authority to impose an admissions tax without legislation changing that. For meals tax, we currently are at 4%, and we've given you a chart of meals taxes. The maximum is 6% that we could apply. We're not suggesting that for this year. You could do that after January 1st, 2026. That is something I think we would want to talk about later and consider in a future budget year with you as a way maybe to provide some additional ongoing resources to meet the school division's needs that we expect over the next 2 or 3 years. Ms. McCarthy, anything I've missed on that slide that we should cover?
Only thing I would add, that 6% maximum on meals tax only applies to counties. And that's why you'll see the city of Newport News and the city of Williamsburg sales tax is above that 6%.
And so because the city had the ability to do, they have different taxing authority than we did, they're not caught up in the historic triangle tax, admissions tax void that we can't do. Is that right?
They are limited, they're not able to increase their tax until the moratorium ends, which is January 1st, 2026. So their increase that you see here, the proposed increases in that and the lodging tax for them would be effective January 1st, 2026. But other than that, there's no further limits.
What amount of, you may not have it, but the revenue going from 4 to 6 would be increase of?
Has it?
Oh,
She has it, yes, sir. She had, Ms. McCarthy, go ahead.
So for 6 months worth, if we were to do this, let's say January 1st, 6 months would be about $2 million in the 26 budget. A full year would be about $4 million of additional tax.
The challenge for us in the 26 budget and getting 6 months, initially, that was something we were talking about the possibility of doing. Our interpretation of the Senate bill is that you can take no action prior to January 1st. You can't adopt an ordinance and make it effective January 1st because you can't adopt it. You can't take that action until January 1st. If you were to take that action early in January, then trying to retroactively do it isn't really feasible. You go forward, the time you communicate it, that's February, March. And I think where we're sitting today, we would suggest you maybe consider that in next budget year and be something that you could fund. As we get into school funding, one of our recommendations there would be to use some fund balance and let this meals tax be that ongoing revenue replacement in the future for that one-time use of fund balance. So that's something we will talk about in the next question. You could do it in late 2026, but you can't adopt it as part of your budget. So it is $2 million per 1% per year. So it could generate an additional $4 million annually.
that would be paid not only from our citizens, but be paid for anybody coming through our area that would be getting a meal.
Be anybody in our restaurants, and a large portion of our meals tax comes from Busch Gardens. So a lot of those are, certainly we're there, but there are a lot of visitors there as well.
So you're saying if we raised it to 5%, it would be 2 million. So if you raised it to 6, which is where everyone else is with the exception of York, you'd get 4.
Yes, ma'am.
On an annual basis.
Any other questions on revenue options or things we ought to be considering for you?
I did just have one question about assessments, and I know we've talked about this before. Should we, we're every 2 years. A lot of places are every year, but I don't know about the increase in the workload. I mean, it just would seem to be not so much quite sticker shock. Of course, we don't have any idea what's going to happen next year with assessments, if they'll level out a little more, but we also never quite catch up. We're still behind what houses are selling for. So would we do better staying more current if we did it every year, or?
Yeah, there's pros and cons to both approaches. We certainly could bring back the pros and cons, the more specific items. There are an additional annual cost to that. We would have to beef up our staffing and that type of thing.
Right.
And so you could weigh the cost benefit. I mean, in years where it's a large increase, there's a bigger jump, but it can go the other direction as well. But we are always a little bit behind because of the timing of our reassessments as well. So we certainly could bring that back to you.
And I thought we talked about it years ago about looking at that. And I think one of the biggest things was not only staffing, but the constant volume of, it doesn't give us as much leeway, because by the time we finish one year, we're into the next year trying to figure that out, and that volume of turning over. So I think that's why we decided later to stick with the 2-year, because it kind of gave us a little bit of a resting period while we're still, because the budget's a year-long process. And then adding that on to it also was increasing the volume of trying to get everything out quick enough And, I think that's why we went and said, let's stick with 2 years. And, you know, some jurisdictions go 4 years but, you know,
It's
I'm
definitely a consideration. I know we use, for example, this year, several of our assessors are going through trainings and certifications and classes, and it gives them that time to make sure they stay abreast on all the changes in the market. The market is constantly changing, and that is what they tend to do in that off year. And also just get out more often and meet with people and do some of that more hands-on evaluation that they're not able to do during the reassessment years as much.
I think if I remember correctly, and Mr. McGlinnan can correct me if I'm wrong, but when I first came on the board, we did reassess every year. And the board went through a bit of a wrangle about determining whether we were going to continue doing it every year or every other year. And we settled on every other year, and it seems to work. The biggest problem, of course, comes when you have a very highly accelerating market. The longer you go, the more the sticker shock is. And I'll give you an example out in Franklin County when I had my lake place out there. I think they reassessed about once every 4 to 6 years. And, you know, the value on the property just went through the roof. I mean, double or triple. And so they had to play games with the tax rate to, you know, keep the revenue. It made it a lot more difficult for people to deal with, I think. So I'm comfortable staying at every other year right now. I think it's probably the best advantage of we could have for the staff and for our citizens. It's not too much of an impact, I hope.
The next slide is a question about how much additional funding to the schools could the county provide and where would this funding come from? Just as a side note, I happened to look through a 1978 budget with County Administrator James Oliver. That year, again, his message was their commitment to excellence education continues, as does yours. I think the county's done that a long time. The additional total revenue to the county was about $270 million. He was proposing $240 million for the schools, so they were getting a significant chunk of the increased revenue, and they were still $100,000 short of what the school division was requesting. So that's a very similar case this year. We're not giving quite as much of the new revenue, but just that problem almost 50 years ago was an ongoing issue for the county and probably will continue the next 25 or 30 years as well. So I just wanted to share that, at least some perspective of it's not a new issue that we're facing, as you know. I will say we have looked at a number of ways. We did provide a $2.8 million increase to the school operations, similar to the county increase in the county's budget. It does fully fund school CIP for projects. And again, we took a different funding method than we have used in past years, as our funding agreement expires at the end of this year, and the city is funding it differently. So we have fully funded all the county CIP. The city has funded their 10% or approximately thereof of county CIP projects and 10% of their city projects. So they are short in their city-funded CIP, and that's an issue I think the city council will have to work with the school division to resolve. So that has created some concern with the school board. But for us, we have fully funded the CIP for the schools in the county, and then we had a split for anything that would be a shared use facility. Based on their revised number, the budget gap, and I know their board and their interim superintendent has said anywhere from $800,000 to $2 million. That's really based on the state budget, which I think is May 2nd before it would be finalized. We have really worked off the criteria that we believe the state will do some more, but I don't know that till it is signed. And so where we were was trying to be in the $1 million range unless the board wanted to push further. And so we've given you options that might go beyond that, but I know in talking with the superintendent or communicating as late yesterday afternoon, $850,000 more would really help them implement their first phase of their pay study and their salary increase. It definitely shorts them in a lot of the positions they had talked about that they needed, but he thought they would be okay with that. So it was trying to get us to $1 million more that would give them to a little more flexibility unless you have a desire to do more than that. So if the state funding doesn't come through, I think we'd have to come back. That would happen before your budget's adopted, and we could talk about that. But again, that would be early May before we have the final decision from the state. Anything else on that slide to cover?
Only thing I would add, that slide is from a school board presentation on April the 15th. The total additional funds needed number is their total from both localities. So our share of that would be roughly 90% using the old percentage on enrollment factor. So.
I would just say that desire, I mean, sure, I desire to give them what they need, you know, but there's going to come a cost on the other side unless we do a change in our tax rate, or if we were able to do something with the meals tax now, or we ask, and I have to put in a plug here because last week I had the pleasure of traveling with several of your people, our people, and they were working late into the night, all of them, on how they could find, because I think you had sent something out and said, look for ways that you might be able to find some additional money to go to schools. And, they were trying to work on this late 11 o'clock and that kind of thing. And I just really appreciate that. So I don't know that desire, it's just, it's the reality maybe of where we are. And I think, as we've said, that we have to have a real conversation moving forward as a community about, because we know the school system's needs are growing with the population that they're serving is just, and so I think we do have to have a conversation about how are we moving forward? How are we going to fund? Because I think it's only going to get larger. And so, but I do appreciate what's been done so far to try to get some additional money. And, so often when you're getting all those emails, it's like, we're trying, we're not just trying to be meanie pants and not give any additional money. We are trying to find the money. But anyway.
Well, the next slide gives you several options of ways to get there. And as you mentioned, since you mentioned this 1.1 million at the bottom of the chart is our departmental kind of list. And we've got a list of that. I believe I shared that with you. I also left a copy at your seat of just items. I'm not recommending that option, but we could. Those are things that if we didn't do them this year, they would show back up in a future budget year. So you're really deferring those kinds of things that I believe the departments need in terms of serving the community. But those are areas that it was worthwhile. We can put forward $1.1 million of reductions if needed. As we talk through options, again, I think where we would like to be is the appropriation of this year-end school surplus. If that defers really the need for additional revenue for a year, but recognizing that's not something we can do year after year. If the idea is the meals tax is appealing today or some other commitment to more property tax or other revenue sources from the county next year, you could defer it that way. And that's certainly an easy way to get there without cuts to our budget. We also could come through these other opportunities for reductions in our departmental budget of using our health insurance reserve. And again, we do have a pretty healthy reserve, so we could, I think Ms. McCarthy and I are comfortable recommending that if that's a desire of the board to go that route. Again, that really doesn't do the recurring revenue piece. That just moves costs 1 year from the general fund to the health reserve that we have. So it still sets up that issue next year of needing that additional $1 million to meet that need. We can just take the 1% raise in January away and see how the year trends. We have a 3% raise in the proposed budget July 1st. We could take out that $350,000. I do know localities around us, the 4% seems to be where most are landing, so that would slip a little behind if we don't give that 1% raise next year. But we've done pretty well the last year and a half, so I think we would be okay at 3% if that was where we needed to be. When we get into the new positions, we have already cut the list from about 20 down to 4. I think those are needed within the departments, but we will make do without them if there's not funding to support that. You get into the 1.1 million, and then we get delaying some of the debt-funded CIP projects that I think I would not recommend, but it's certainly an option for you to consider that we could just delay that borrowing, which would delay those projects 6 or 9 months as we push that further out. So, Ms. McCarthy, anything else in there that you think we should cover for them?
I would just mention on that top bullet, referring to this year's year-end surplus, of course, the agreement that we currently or previously had, the funding part of that allowed for the year-end surplus to be set aside for future school uses. It did not specify capital or operating, so that's really at your leisure. In conversations with the school CFO, they are anticipating a year-end surplus similar to what we've seen in recent years. Last year, that number was about $6 million. And so certainly setting aside a portion of that to help with their funding needs for next year is a viable option. And then the balance of that, of course, could still be used for CIP needs for the school division or other needs they may have. As Mr. Stevens mentioned, that gives us some time until we budget next year, and at that time you could consider other revenue sources such as the meals tax so that that one-time use of fund balance doesn't continue into future budget years.
Could you say a little bit more about that, Ms. McCarthy, just in terms of how that works with the budget process itself? I mean, we know that we can't raise the meals tax, for instance, until January, and so we can't really include that in the budget, I assume, right?
That's
Because,
correct.
and in this particular case, we're sort of making a determination that we think there's going to be a particular fund balance left from this year's school budget. Can we still add it, and anticipate it in the budget?
We could, for some reason, if that surplus did not materialize, we would come back to you with some other options. Most like it may be our fund balance that they could reinstate during a future year where they did have a bigger surplus. The risk there seems pretty slim based on what their current estimate is, but we do still have 3 months left, so anything could happen. And again, what we would do in this year for the fiscal year 26 budget is we would build in a new revenue source of, let's say it's $1 million, if that was what you decided that you wanted to give them in addition to what's already in the budget. We would build in $1 million funding source, being their year-end surplus, and then we would increase the operating transfer to the school division by that $1 million, so your budget stays in balance. Looking forward to the 27 budget, we would recommend taking out that one-time use of fund balance and replacing it with some other recurring revenue, whether that be meals tax, real estate taxes, or some other source. Buys time.
The last 3 or 4 years I know of, we've been 6 to 8 million surplus, trending somewhere in there. Some it's 8, some it's 6. So what point would their financial group sit there and go, okay, well, we're having an amount over and we need to pay our teachers more. So let's start placing that as a budgeted item from then on, because we can't take it as a one-time item, because we don't know if it's going to be there next year, but they're showing a trend of being over budget for this will be the 4th year, and they've done it other years, but to that amount between 6 and 8 million. So why wouldn't somebody on the school side sit there and go, you know what, we're trending over and it's becoming a pattern. Let's continue with that same step we're going up and asking for, and take that money and put that into the raises, because they're looking for 7, they're 6, they're not far, plus the 2 that we're giving them, plus we're looking at another. I just know with this budget and what our staff needs and what we need, and we're cutting people. And, we finally, since I've been on this board, we've finally been able to slowly claw our way out of the nonsense we were in when I got on the board, and being able to pay what needs to be paid and get the people that we need to get in. And we finally worked our way up to that. We're not on the high level, but we've worked our way up to a decent level. I hate to see us go and start chopping away at that. And the same thing with our savings when I got in here. We've slowly piled that up so that we have that cushion. We get an ice storm or hurricane, we're going to lose a lot of cushion. And all of a sudden we give it away and we wait for FEMA to pay us, and a year and a half later, FEMA's paying us. And we're having to pay those bills now. And that cushion is helping us. And plus our triple bond rating is on, not all of it, but a portion of that is weighed into that. So, and it just seems to me that we are living within our budget as close as possible. And I would expect the school to do the same. Now, I'd expect to assist them with anything we can. And I don't think we need the meal tax, and y'all will be voting on that next year, probably. I won't be. And maybe I'll be out in the audience complaining about it. No, I'm just playing, y'all. But, that's something you'll be looking at next year as an option, which is a pretty good option because it doesn't affect everyone, where, the personal properties and real estate and all that does affect each member. And we finally got that up. We're not totally where we need to be, but we've slowly got that inched up to where, we're in a pretty good area. And I still think we don't need to have a tax increase for 5 years. Now, the meals tax would be something different, not including that. But, you know, if I was doing the budget for the school and I was seeing a trend of this every year, a couple of years ago, I'd have been looking at, hey, let's start adding teacher raises, 1%, 2%, whatever, you know, and maybe bumping it up to where normally 6 million or 8 million, maybe I'll bump it to 5 million. And then I'll start using that and, you know, I don't understand why we do it. And our team is so good at it and they're helping the school with it. How they don't get this. Maybe they do and I'm just missing something, but I don't understand why it is so difficult. To me, it's common sense. If I've got 4 pennies every year left over, well, I'm going to take those 4 pennies and I'm going to utilize them somewhere where I need to. And I'm going to talk to y'all and say, hey, look, I can utilize these 4 pennies. I'm not changing anything. Take this extra and I'm going to, you know, utilize it. I'm glad they're saving. It's a plus there. Bless them for doing that and good job. So it's not all, I'm not trying to beat on the school, you know, finance group. I'm just saying that, you know, maybe we'll look into that as far as, you know, $6 million, you know, I want to see the teachers have a raise. I want to make sure they're paid, you know, what they need to pay. And I've always said that, but there's limited amount of funds and all that. And I'm glad to see our CIP is fully funded. And, you know, and I've been banging on the mayor lately, so maybe he needs to get in there and open his checkbook and get his where he needs to be and get it up to where it needs to be. And, you know, maybe that maybe needs to be out in the news somewhere and say James City County's holding their end. City, it's up to you. Checkmate. That's all I have right this minute.
I think they would probably say, I mean, that it was attrition, people, positions that they weren't able to hire, that they had requested in their budget. Do you know where the majority of that savings is coming from?
Looking at their analysis from the last couple of years, it typically is a combination of additional revenues as well as expenditure savings. The bulk of it, I would say, is expenditure savings. I think I've heard them say recently their personnel budget's 87% of their total budget. So I imagine it is turnover and vacancy savings. I do know that they do build in some attrition. I don't know at what level, and I don't know if they've stepped that up this year to get their ass down. I do know they're also restructuring or looking to restructure their health insurance program, which will also generate quite a bit of savings for them. So they have taken some measures. They're using the same consultants that we are. So they've been very engaged with us on those types of things. I don't know to the extent of attrition that they build in or any further details other than that.
Because we turn that over when we have that, you know, so maybe it's something that we can help them with and teach them how to turn that over, just like our health insurance and the savings we're making there. How can we help them? I'm not saying they're doing anything bad or anything wrong or don't take it anyway. It's how can we assist you to better work your financing? Not that they're doing a bad job, but how can we do it better? How can we make a better mousetrap?
Mr. Triple, we are, you know, again, we are recommended taking some of their savings and sending that back to them. So it really, I guess for them, and I don't want to defend too much, but they can't carry that fund balance. That has to come back to us. And if I were on their side, I wouldn't want to have to go back to us in June and say I need another $1 million too many times. So I guess that risk taking and the COVID times have all made it sort of strange where revenues were higher than projected and costs. So not defending, but I do understand some of that. But I've had some of that conversation with the interim superintendent about Ms. McCarthy and I would be supportive of supporting that approach. But that's a different mindset, and it does create potentially some issues late in a budget year that as a superintendent, you probably wouldn't want to bring forward asking for money then.
But what if they divide that year in half and go, okay, we're not able to hire, we're not going to be able to hire, but we can see we're trending to have this amount left over. Let's go ahead then at that point do a raise and hold our line where we hold our line when, you know, I mean, there's countless amounts of ask in our book as far as employees and what our staff needs and all that. And one right behind the other, cut, nope, can't have it, can't have it, can't have it, because it's just not there. But where you can, you're going, okay, we'll do this, we'll do that. Police department need it, fire department need it, maintenance needs it. So, you kind of balance that out, and maybe it's a halfway look and go, okay, where are we trending? What are we looking at? And just old country math.
I was going to mention that when we're looking at trying to assist them with their raises for the teachers, we have to remember that is an ongoing commitment, and it requires ongoing revenue to support it. We can't use one-time revenue. Now, we can use one-time revenue to bridge from one one year to the next, but I'm cautious about. I want to try to give them as much as we can to help them implement that program. And one of the problems is that you've got up to $2 million worth sitting there until the 2nd of May, until the General Assembly and the governor have to make a decision on it. So we don't know how much federal money's coming. I mean, state money's coming back to them. There's so much in flux with their budget. But I personally would not be adverse to trying to see if we could squeeze out the additional $1 million, but I would like to do it in a way that is, if you will, where we are maybe doing it with something now that we can backfill with regular revenue from potentially the meals tax at a later time.
And I'd agree with that. That's why I was saying that I know one time, okay, they've got this savings this year, so that's a one time, and it may not be next year. But there's a trend we're seeing over 4 or 5 years of amount of revenue that is left. So that's indicating something there to us. And so if you take that and use that, a percentage of that, as far as that, then that's a reoccurring thing. It's not a one time, because it's planted into their budget. And I know it's planted in probably for another person, 2 people, 6 people, 8 people, whatever. But if they're not getting that, maybe we reallocate those funds within their budget that goes for a raise of the people that are here, instead of trying to find somebody we can't another year down the road. And so just a thought, just trying to figure out another way to skin that onion.
I would be curious as to, because it would seem like they might come back to us and say, well, we've got all these positions that we can't fill because we're not paying enough. That's why we've got some additional funds left over at the end. We can't get people, or we lose people to Newport News or to York. But it would, at some point in your conversation, why is it that these positions go unfilled? It also could be because they're so specialized that there's just nobody out there right now to take those positions. And so, but they have to ask for them because they need them, but I don't know what they're doing if they don't get them. So,
And
I would.
That's a good point. I like that point, because, then if they take that and they take that and bump the raises up, that'll push us and push them up to another bracket as far as having the ability then to attract more. Maybe we start with that and get the ability to attract more teachers, that, we slowly bring that up, and that gives us maybe another pool to look at. A good point there.
Ms. Larson, I think the school board and interim superintendent in their revised budget request was taking the approach we took some years ago of trying to prioritize pay so that we could fill our vacant positions over new positions. And that's what they prioritized in their revised request, as I understand it, implementing their pay plan, giving pay raises to get their salaries more competitive so they can fill those spots. So just what you're talking to.
I just want to make a couple of points about the kind of situation we're in this year in particular, because I've been through this budget process a number of times, and I think the aspect of this one that makes it so challenging is the sort of unpredictability of where we are. We don't yet have a state budget. That has significant implications for the amount of money available, especially for education. We don't know what the economy is going to be like, whether tourism will be strong or weak. Certainly this spring has given some indications of a pretty strong economy for tourism, but we also have concerns about the degree to which international travel may be cut back, and whether that will be a plus or a minus for us. So that's a challenge. We have an unprecedented, I think, level of request initially from schools, and in making that request, I understand the justification for it and think that it's something that, especially having addressed the issues of comparable salaries in our region for our county employees, that we really do need to think about seriously how we can send a message of yes, we realize this is important. We want to show good faith in addressing this question, but this may not be the year we can fully embrace the requests you're making in that regard. And I promised a constituent who called me about 20 minutes before I left for this meeting that I would express the concern that homeowners are saying that they're going to find it too challenging this year to see their rates go to the full 83 cents. And I tried to explain the fact that we have a lot of challenges that we're trying to face because of increased demand on local government, given the nature of the economy and so forth. But it is something that we just need to understand is a real concern to some folks in the community as well. I think when we put all that together, we are sort of operating a bit in the dark. We're sort of trying to do the best we can to feel our way through this. And I don't think it's going to be found in simple solutions. I don't think it's going to be found in decisions to simply say, well, let's push something off that we've already invested heavily in, and recognizing that the cost will not go down for something that we're committed to doing anyway, and that we are actually in a position to, over the long term, save the county's taxpayers a significant amount of money. So all of that's simply to say, I think this is going to really be a moving target as we go through the next several weeks. And it's going to require all the creativity we can find. I want to thank the schools for being willing at this point to consider a different healthcare model that I think has served us well and helped us to control costs much better than the previous than the systems they've been using. I want to say I understand why we have those large surpluses, and in fact, I think that the amount that Ms. McCarthy tells us that she's now receiving from the schools is significantly larger than what we were hearing just a few weeks ago about how much of a carryover there was or of a surplus there was likely to be returned to the local governments. And then finally, we have one other issue, and that is, we're conditioning all of this on our belief about how the school should be funded. And we have to make sure that there's a final agreement one way or another as to exactly what that's going to be. So all of these are things that don't make it any easier for us to make our decisions. It means that we're looking at all these kind of questions and getting as much information as we can. But it also means that we're just going to have to wait in some instances to see where things land. But we can't wait forever because we have to have that budget in place before the end of June. So.
If you did mention this, my apologies. The city has given them an amount. They have said that they are fully funding their request, but that is on a model that does not take into account that they've not been paying what their own consultant study, from my understanding, said that they should be paying. And so we, the citizens of James City County, in somewhat are subsidizing, and we're already paying over 90% of the cost. So what is the shortfall right now between the city's what we thought the city might pay and what they're actually paying. What's that additional number?
Of course, I have a number. Let me make sure I don't tell you wrong. What the city
I
has.
think, I just clarify one thing about the, about
Sure.
your question, Ruth. I think that when we're talking about what their consultant said if they had an independent school system, they would have to pay this much additional.
True, but,
Yeah, but the point is that,
yeah,
you know, beyond that,
Yeah.
it's also,
thank you for the
yes.
clarification.
What the city has in their proposed budget, and this is from their budget sheet, is 12.7 million for capital. I mean, for operating, and that is different than our funding formula, because they have said that our old funding formula, they said they have provided more than the school division would have requested from them on the old funding formula based on what we were recommending. But they've got 12.7 million. With the proposed funding model we've talked about, it would be an additional 1.6 million from the city. They've not agreed to that model. We've talked about it a number of times, but we believe that's a fairer model, more equitable for each of us paying for our respective groups of children. And so that's still sort of the ongoing discussion there. It's not really predicated today on the amount of 2.8 million. I think the city's going to give what they choose to give in operating. Right now at 2.8 million, an increase from us, their funds are increasing more than that 10% of the old funding formula would have been. So they can say that they are funding more than the old formula would have required of them. But I still would argue it's $1.6 million behind what we believe to be a fair funding model.
But that's going to leave the schools still, even if we do,
I think if you were to give the schools, they need an additional, as I understand it, $850,000 to implement.
and they've taken,
They've taken a lot of positions out and other cuts.
but they've taken what the city is gonna give and what we're gonna get. They're not counting on the additional 1 point that we think that the city ought to give. Okay,
No, ma'am, I do not think the
Okay.
school division is, they've seen what the city's put in their operating
Okay.
budget, they've seen what we've put, and what they need is an additional 850,000. If you were to do $1 million, that would be a little more. That would give them a little more ability to put a few things back, but not the full, I guess, almost $8 million request of us that we have been working from.
so for me, I would rather see the million come from their, what they believe will be what's left.
Or surplus.
Their surplus, thank you. I could not get that word out, but yes, that's where I would like to see the funds
That's
come
what we
from.
would recommend as a staff this year. Not normally, that's unusual to get Ms. McCarthy to recommending
I know,
that, but with the idea that that would let us talk about a funding source for that next year, recognizing it's an ongoing expense, whether that's meals tax or something else. I think for this year, that seems to be a reasonable solution to get there. With the large surpluses they've been running in the school division, we would anticipate to be able to cover that $1 million plus our capital contribution from them as well.
And that amount that is, the schools are looking at is based on the governor's submitted budget as opposed to the legislative budget, or
Their
not?
range that we put, I guess it was the previous slide of 800,000 to 2 million. That is based on the state not adopting a budget yet. So they're still expecting over $1 million more from the state budgets, what I think they're anticipating. If that didn't occur, then they need the $2 million. And you could revisit that May 13th and decide to fund that or not. But I think before you adopt a budget, you'd have an answer from the state, I believe, on.
Always hope.
So wouldn't it be nice if the city would come up with a 1.6?
Yeah.
That would make it whole. That would-
It wouldn't make the school, it would make that 2 million whole.
At 2 million, right.
But it would give the school division more funding. It wouldn't meet their
Right.
total request,
No.
but it would help. Yes, it would help.
You get them a lot further than where they're, you know, with James City County covering their portion and the city cover their portion, you know, and maybe that's what needs to be. Maybe the group that comes here to talk to us, maybe go to the city and say, hey, how about the 1.6? And that would definitely help the teachers out there. And I think too that, you know, with the environment we have out there, we need to stay our course and stay on task and on target and all that. But with the environment out there and everybody till everything clears and settles down, the sky's not falling. It looks like it's falling, but it's not falling. And we just gotta wait to see where everything equals out. And there hadn't been a budget yet that I've sat in that we're not waiting on the governor, whoever the governor would be. We're waiting on the governor to get his budget out so we can see, is there money? Is there not money? Is there anything left? I know we talk about it every budget that I've been on. Well, we're anticipating the governor's gonna do, and whoever the governor is. And whether it's gonna come in, whether it's not, we're hoping this comes in, hoping that, but it's always a last minute. It seems like at least it has been since I've been on the board. It's just helter skelter till the last minute and go, oh, we did get it, or we got cut some. We've got to come up with more money.
We've always been in that situation for adoption of our budget on our regular cycle, where we're waiting until just before that meeting to know exactly where things stand. But we've had a couple of instances in the last year or two where the legislature and the governor have not agreed in June. That's more challenging.
Yep.
Well, I would like to remind us that, we have a scheduled adoption May 13th, but given what's transpires between now and then, we may elect at that point to still consider discussing it and adopt later in May or even early June. I mean, the requirement, I believe, is that we have to have it done by the end of June. But I don't know what flexibility we have, but I don't think there's a hard stop on us on the 13th. If we
Well, I
have
think the last time, one time we did, and I don't know if it was the last one, but we adopted it and then said we could always go back if this or that happened. We can always go back and rework the certain areas that are where either light or over and rework that, but we would adopt a budget so that way staff could go ahead with the first of the year, which is January or June rather, and get their stuff moving and that sort of thing. And then the board could go back and reappropriate or pull back or whatever they do to readjust the budget later. Am I correct?
Yeah, you are. And Mr. Eisen, I would say we could certainly confirm having to adopt in May. Certainly by July 1st, you have to have a budget in place. I do like Mr. Hippel. Years past, we had put money aside in a contingency that we didn't give to schools when the budget was very late and we were uncertain, but you could always come back and amend the budget. So you could increase the contribution to the schools May 13th. We'll make sure you could delay if you want to. We could have that option. That'll make staff uncomfortable, but we're okay with that. We've been uncomfortable before, so we could get there if that's what the board would like to do. We'll make sure we don't get into a legal problem with that, but we certainly could amend the budget or have money set aside that we haven't given schools, but you could give them if you needed to. So.
And I would observe that I agree that from an old aviator standpoint, the sky's not falling, but the ground's coming up awful fast.
That's all right. Just keep stepping.
It seems like there's consensus around using $1 million of the school surplus to give that to the school division for FY26. Okay, thank you. The last question, I thought, well, we might be here a little quicker, but it's if the county provided a 2-cent tax credit on real estate taxes, how much would the credit cost and how could it be funded? Again, that 1 cent on the tax rate is 1.6 million, so 2 cents would be around 3.2 million. There are a couple options of trying to use year-end surpluses, prior year unassigned fund balance, and reducing our CIP as we did last year. Last year, the credit we gave reduced our CIP. I think if you were looking for a recommendation from us, we would take that same approach of maybe either fronting our CIP or delaying some CIP, $3.2 million worth, with the idea that when we have our year-end number for FY25, which we should have a pretty good approximation in July, that you reappropriate that in July. So while we take the CIP out of this year's budget, we would recommend you put it back in July. That way the impact of the budget is not significant. And I say that we have, in your CIP, the project side of it, because of rising costs, we have really picked that apart pretty hard. On the school side, while I say we fully funded, there were 3 items in prior years we didn't fund, but we have taken some of those CIP pieces out of it for us. And I just want to make sure before we really take that out that the board wants to be there, and that takes a little more thoughtfulness on my side of some maintenance projects that I typically have not gone into, trying to not fund. I'd be more comfortable saying, let's take them out with the commitment that our intent would be to use our surplus for FY25 and refund them in July of 25 so they could move forward as part of our budget if you're comfortable with that approach. Otherwise, they would wait for the budget process in 27 and in the spring of 26 for the FY27 budget.
So this question's asking, if I'm reading it correctly, if we were to provide a 2-cent tax credit a permanent 2-cent tax credit, 1 year.
It's just like we did 5
did,
cents this last
right.
year. In other words, if we, instead of going straight to 83 this year, we went to 80, left it at 83, but gave a 2 cent, or you could do a 2 cent or even a 1 cent, reduction or credit on the bill. This is what the impact would be.
Well, I know that, and this will sound crazy, but, that's why I went to 5, because it gave them a little bit more money in the bank for the citizens. But, I know the one time we did the 1 cent, I got more complaints on, you could have kept the damn the $20, and rather than, send me a check you spent more money sending me a check for $20 than you would have, so I don't know if it's,
This one was basically just deducted off the bill, so
Right.
So that we weren't cutting rebate checks or whatever. I think that had to do with personal property or something earlier. I can't remember how that was, but this one was set up so that essentially you calculate your tax rate at 83 cents, and then we gave them a 5 cent credit, so that they were essentially paying 78, and that's what the bill was.
Right.
And so if I wanted to at least have us consider whether or not we wanted to do something similar this year to a lesser extent to bring us closer up to the 83, whether it was, a 2 cent, and a 2 cents seemed to be about half, spreading the distance between where we were at 78 and 83. So this is what I was the one who asked for it, because I wanted to see what it would do. And the question is whether we think as a board it's worth doing, or because it would entail funding it the way we did last year, which was to essentially cut some of the CIP, and then when you had surplus, backfill. So it would, you're backfilling with it's a one-time expense, but you're backfilling with a one-time money from the end of the year.
I know there's no guarantees where the next 5 years will be. I don't think we'll have to do, my opinion, country math, that we have to do a tax increase in 5 years. But that being said, being that we'd go back to the 83 cent this year. And in that way, that would give us the funds we need for these other items that we've been trying to do. And do I want to pay any more taxes? No, I'd rather not pay any daggone taxes, period. But we know that's part of life, and that's part of living in a great community and having all the amenities that we have in James City County. So that goes along with it. I love the fact that I can leave the community and know that there's police officers and firefighters and even our regular personnel that may see something going on that protect me and my family. So it's a plus, and we've got all the other things that we've got going along with it. So I know you can't guarantee 5 years will never raise taxes. You can't make that guarantee because you don't know what tomorrow brings. But if we could just go with the opinion that we will try not to raise any taxes for at least 5 years and keep it at 83 cents. I think that's going to do us better in the long run than trying to go, 2 cent this year and then go back to 83 next year. My opinion.
Well, I certainly appreciate the question, but I think it would be really insulting because we have heard we're not funding the schools at where they say we are finding additional money, and I very much appreciate that. And I would fall in probably the $7 category. I would much rather see that money go back to the county and then and as a result to the schools. $7 is important to me as well. But I feel very blessed to live in this community. It offers a lot, I think, for a little. I understand that people move down here. They've made quite a profit on a home elsewhere, and they have homes that are assessed very high, and so their tax bill can be high. And so, it might be see $13 come back. I understand that, but But to me, I just don't think this is the year to give back a tax credit. I think we've seen the needs that I think Scott and his staff have shown us what is needed, and we need to stick to that. So,
2 cents.
Oh, I think I gave my 2 cents there earlier. On this particular question,
Yeah,
you
on
know,
this pick.
yeah, I mean, I think people do need to understand that the difference between the 2 cent credit and the full tax rate, first of all, it will not apply to the June bill that they receive, but rather for December, and that it is $7 a month for the average home, the average cost home in the county, which is a little over $400,000. So, you know, I think, of course, always willing to listen to people's concerns and arguments about that, but you know, I think this is a pretty defensible budget from every aspect.
That's all we have unless you have more questions of us. And again, we're good until May 13th and beyond, but certainly if you have other things that come up, we're happy to discuss those.
you'll keep us updated on what happens at the state legislative budget, okay, great.
Knowing you, you'll know before I do, but as soon as I hear it, I will pass that on.
I thought we were going to ask you to do that for us.
Mr. President.
Maybe we'll get some inside scoop this weekend.
We'll keep you up to date as we hear information for sure.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank y'all.
Thank you.
Next, our perennial government center update from Mr. Einheimer.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, board members, Mr. Stevens, Mr. Kinsman. I am here to provide my monthly government center update, and I do have quite a bit to share today. So as you are aware, you recently approved the change order to take the library programming and up to 30% schematic design for that potential library addition. I see Ms. Towers in the back, and I do want to thank her and her senior staff. They gave a library tour of both the library in Croker and the one in the city to myself and members of the design team with Henderson Gilbane. Outstanding. Saw a lot of different things in the libraries. Really good opportunity for the library staff to express the things that they really like in the library currently and things that they might want to see change moving forward. Had a little exercise, did some programming discussion, played with some widgets and moved things around so the library folks could kind of talk about where in the building they would like to see things, but very productive. I thought it was a really good process. You know, the ultimate goal for us in the library design process is at some point to catch it up to the government process. You know, obviously we're well beyond that 30% design, so we're kind of on the fast track with the library trying to get it caught up at some point to where the government center is. So if the decision of the board is to move forward with both, we're building both at the same time, as opposed to coming back later and building the library addition. So that's certainly the goal. We've done a lot with traffic. We did get our final traffic results back from the most updated traffic study, which included the library as a part of that analysis. And I'll show you on the site plan some of the changes, and I think I've talked about it before previously. We also had quite a few discussions with the Henderson Gilbane group on opportunities where we could cut some costs from the government center, trying to do it where it doesn't have major impacts on the government center. You know, we certainly don't want to impact the core functions or the primary things that we're putting in the government center. We don't want to lose those things, but found some ways to cut some costs, you know, with the ultimate goal of getting the cost down $7 or $8 million from where it currently is today. But I say that with some caution, and they don't know, the builders don't know, and I certainly don't know economy-wise and tariff-wise how things are going to progress in the coming months. But we'll look at that when we cross that bridge, I guess, whenever we get there. Also having some discussions about LEED, you know, whether we're going to do a basic commissioning or an enhanced commissioning. So we're having those discussions. We actually have a meeting tomorrow to discuss that a little bit more. So we'll see where that ends up. I also wanted to provide you with a site plan update. So this is the site plan that you all have seen previously. That was the most up-to-date one that I'd provided to you all, and that was the last one that you all had seen. point out a couple things. The two roundabouts on Ashbury, and you won't see too many different, you won't see any site improvements really on here other than the right turn lane off of Ashbury onto Depew, and there was a right turn lane off of Long Hill onto Ashbury. That was the site plan that you all saw. That was the previous site plan. The new site plan, which is where we are today and is current, with the traffic impact study being completed, the recommendations that we've gotten through VDOT and through our own engineers is putting that roundabout on Ashbury and Depew, and then another roundabout at Long Hill and Depew. The one at Long Hill and Depew would be a 4-lane, 2 for each direction. The one on the bottom at Ashbury and Depew would just be a 1-lane roundabout. Having that roundabout down at Ashbury and Depew seemed kind of foolish to have 2 other roundabouts on Ashbury. So you'd be going through 3 roundabouts to get to the government center typically. So we made some modifications there. We moved the building up just a little bit north on this design, which actually allows us to increase the depth of the wet pond, which will help alleviate some of the issues with stormwater as far as those roundabouts go. And you'll see there's just one roundabout now that takes you into the government center. This design also reduces the impact on the recreational center parking side. On the old version, they lost about 50 parking spaces with some of the improvements we were going to have to make. This one actually saves us money, and also we only lose 20 spaces from the rec center, which I know there's been quite a bit of discussion about parking. You know, and I think early on we talked a lot about the rec center potentially serving as overflow parking for the government center. And I just want to be really clear on that. You know, when we talked about that in the past, that was in anticipation of a very large board meeting where we had several hundred folks coming to attend. That will be a rare occurrence. And if it were a normal board meeting that occurred after 5, the government center parking lot would still be able to accommodate that. So commenting and saying the rec center would serve as overflow for the government center, probably not in reality ever going to happen, but it potentially could. I think what's more likely to happen is the government center parking lot will serve as overflow for the recreational center parking on evenings and weekends when they have large events at the rec center. So I just wanted to point that out because I had a couple comments from employees about that. Any questions about this site plan? Little timeline, kind of where we're going from here. In this next week, we have several meetings, and those are 3 separate meetings. That top bullet point, we're meeting tomorrow to discuss the EOC, you know, how the EOC is going to function in the new government center, services that we're going to need to provide the EOC, you know, emergency backup generator, AV needs, all those types of things. Building security, Patrick Page and some other IT folks, we're going to talk about that, access control. And we also have a lead meeting tomorrow. So a lot going on in the next week to talk about different issues. Special use permit is scheduled to go before the Planning Commission on May 7th, 2025. And that should be to you, the board, in either the June or July board meeting. Final site plan approval should be in September of 2025. Construction funding, hopefully the first phase of that comprehensive agreement to begin that site work will be in September or October 2025. And the land disturbing permit and site work hopefully will begin in October or November. The most recent geotech study, soil conditions, you know, there could be some concern about doing site work over the winter months. We'll address those issues as they arise. If that site work would have to be delayed, it would have to be delayed, but we'll see where we go from there. Any questions on the timeline? All right. I put this slide in here, gosh, it's been probably 2.5 years now. If you all recall, Guernsey Tingle and RKG Associates came in and did a cost comparison study where they compared the cost of staying where we are, adding on, renovating, doing the things we need to do to continue to grow at our current locations versus the cost of a new consolidated government center. This is that exact same slide from that presentation, just with the numbers updated. I know I spoke with each of you individually a few months ago, and we talked about this. And I think that just the point of this is it's still very comparable. Whether we build a new government center or we stay where we are and just add on and do the things we would have to do, the cost is still very comparable. One thing I do want to point out, though, on the consolidated scenario side, it does have that reversion value. If you see that about 3/4 of the way down, It's $19,774,000 if you see that one. That's considering you all were to sell the Mounts Bay complex, to sell the Palmer Lane complex, to sell the Old Town property. That's going to be a decision for the board to make down the road. You know, obviously, there's a lot of value in this property. We understand that. There aren't many big vacant properties in the PSA elsewhere in the county. You know, a future need for the county may be a middle school site. The future may be for some other large project where we might have to go out and actually purchase property if we were to sell the Mounts Bay property. But that's a decision you all can make down the road. For the sake of this comparison, that's what they anticipated. So that decision will be made by you all down the road. Any questions on this? That is all I have for an update this month. Is there anything else you'd like to discuss or talk about?
I've got a few.
Yes, sir.
We spend a ton of money on LEED, making projects LEED certified and that sort of thing, to basically hang a plaque on the wall. You know, there's a lot of things that the groups can do that meet up or match up with LEED. And I know the board before me, you know, came out with saying we're going to do all LEED certified, LEED this, LEED that. Well, being in the construction industry, knowing this, it doesn't benefit but so much on the practices and everything that go on now compared to what went on years ago. But the cost to have that done is huge. And if we can take that cost and put it into the building, and the contractors that you have already do LEED, know what LEED is, know what it is, you know, to get a plaque for on the wall for $400,000 or $500,000 is, you know, when we can do the same thing in-house with the crew we have. And I just, you know, and it's going to be up to the future boards, but I don't see a need to have a LEED certification just to have a LEED certification on there. When we can do all that, save the money, and also do the LEED stuff that needs to be done to keep the environmental things and the air conditioning and heat and that sort of thing in there. So that's just, that's one part. The other one was, it's one on the slide thing that I wanted to ask about. Somebody else has a question. I'm gonna think about it. I wrote the one down. I knew I should have wrote the second one down.
While we were talking about LEED, I just was curious as to what our plan is for energy use in the building. Is it conventional, you know, connection to power lines? Is it geothermal? Is there any kind of?
It is conventional, but we are having discussions. We had some meetings with Dominion Power about placing solar on the rooftops of the building. That would provide us the energy that we need. Of course, the excess then goes back out to their grid when we're not utilizing it. But we're having those discussions. Dominion actually has a program where they do come out and install that system at no cost, assuming they can generate enough extra power to pay for it. So we're having
It's like a lot of rooftop there, so that should.
There's a lot of rooftop, but because it's a conventional system, there's a lot of apparatus on the roof too. So we haven't submitted, they're asking for the final plan of the rooftop so they can kind of figure out how many solar panels would fit up there. As soon as we have that, we'll be sending that to them.
And do these cost estimates include the microwave machine?
It's a small portion, very small portion.
As Dr. McGlennon mentioned, I was just sort of curious as to the consideration given to geothermal. I think we've only done a couple of buildings like that, a couple of schools.
Right.
But I don't know whether that's the cost benefit analysis. Have you done any look at that as to whether it would be beneficial on this? Or
We did look at that early on, just due to the restrictions of the site, the space on the site, the number of wells that would have to be drilled to be able to provide that service to that size of facility. It just wasn't cost effective.
feasible.
We
Okay.
couldn't do it.
And I did have a question, just kind of a history question for you about this building, not just general. The question of when did we sort of begin this process?
Depends on who you ask. Mr. Hipple would say we began this process about 12 years ago.
Yeah.
We received the unsolicited proposal from the group that we received from the end of 22. So, we've kind of worked through that. You all signed that first interim agreement in January or February of '24.
Over that 2+ years of experience, we've had a number of public meetings here and at the Legacy Hall and other locations. I had a lot of discussion of this. We had the opportunity for people to submit proposals, alternative proposals, and there was a competitive process available.
Yes, sir. That was part of the PPEA process. We were required by code to advertise for 120 days, which we did, and we did receive one competing proposal. And as far as meetings go, we did have 2 public meetings at Legacy Hall dedicated solely to the Government Center, but we've spoke about it, I'll say at every board meeting, every work session meeting, at least for the past year, and numerous meetings prior to that. And we had a meeting at Legacy Hall where we talked about the Sports Center too, and it was discussed then as well.
And the other thing, we also, as a board, we went through a space needs study prior to receiving the unsolicited proposal. We talked about facilities master planning of all of our facilities. So we identified the need a year or 2 ahead of receiving the unsolicited proposal, because your public discussions around that are what generated the interest from the private sector to submit that proposal. So we have talked about the need for space and where we might end up for quite a few years now.
And on the topic of space, I'll throw this out there just so you all hear it and the public can hear it as well. The current folks that we're looking at moving to this consolidated government center currently occupy about 120,000 square feet. The needs assessment showed we'd need about 225,000 square feet today, really, for them. Moving forward with the consolidation of space, using common conference rooms and just one cafeteria, one break, different things like that, we were able to reduce that down significantly to that 185,000 square foot that we're at right now. So a lot of advantages to that consolidated space, a lot of shared efficiencies, and just a lot of benefits for employees and I think for residents as well.
Thank you.
And then you've got to include all the benefits of all the maintenance of all the buildings and all the grounds and everything else when you put it under one roof. All the vehicles riding up and down the road and everything else, now they're gonna ride up and down an elevator. So they don't have to go across. The citizens come to one-stop shop as close as possible and do everything they need to do. And then it gives us the ability, like this area, if we use part of this area for a school site and part of it is development or whatever the board beyond me decides to do with it.
Great
And then-
waterfront park.
Mhm.
Great waterfront park.
And tuning, you got tuning over there. Everybody wants to be on Tuning Road for some reason, and they love it over there. And so we have land over there that we can utilize. And if the citizens think about it, if they look at those things and look at what we're paying and not getting a tax on, period, and we turn some of these into commercial businesses, not only we're getting a tax where we're not getting a tax as the government owns it. And so, we're winning as far as the environment goes, as far as the vehicles up and down the road and everything underneath one building, the maintenance of all the buildings we have, all the landscaping and cutting the grass and everything else that we have, all those things add up not only environmentally, but cash back for the citizens back into the budget so that we're not going to be spending, because now we're having a building, we're building for 40, 50 years down the road. And, the first 8, 10 years, there's going to be little of no maintenance on it. And so where there's maintenance on every building, it wasn't long ago over to county administrator's office, next thing you know, they're digging the whole floor up to fix a daggone pipe that has gone bad and just because it's old and wore out. And it just takes, it's no more than common sense. You got something old and run down and you want to put something on it and you're not going to save a darn thing, you might as well build something new. And if you're going to be a bear, be a grizzly. And that's all I got to say on that item.
Sir.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we now go to board requests and directives. Michael.
I'm good. Thank you.
I'll just say briefly that I attended the hurricane conference last week, which I thought was very, very informative. Disappointing in that the federal government did not have much of a presence there. I guess they've cut travel, and there seemed to be There's not a whole lot of insight or direction yet for hurricanes coming out from the federal government. So I'm hoping that changes quickly because there is a prediction of more storms than ever. And so I also think that the responsibility of the local government, you're going to see change a bit moving forward, and that we're going to need to be prepared. We've been prepared, so don't mean it like that, but our level of preparedness will change, I think, as we see changes with FEMA and other things on the federal level. But went with a great group of people from James City, and it was a very busy conference. We started about 8 in the morning and ended about 5:30 in the afternoon, and a lot, and we shared what we learned. And then just this weekend, James City County will be hosting the VACO Spring Board of Directors meeting. So welcoming in the Board of Directors from VACO from all across the Commonwealth of Virginia. And I think we have about 30 that are coming. And we're going to be doing a meeting, Legacy Hall, and then we have a tour. And I just have to give a huge shout out to Scott and Jason, and especially John Carnifax, who has helped tremendously. And Teresa and Anya, everybody that has helped. This is no easy feat. So having all these people and logistics and everything to host them, but we're really excited. And I just want to thank everybody that's been involved. If I left out a name, I'm sorry, but Brad, Jason, Scott, John, Anya, Teresa, just Parks and Rec, everybody that's helping, because we're going to be doing a big tour on Saturday afternoon. So we need the rain to stay away so we can showcase our beautiful county. So if you see people you don't recognize around town this weekend, I hope you'll welcome them here.
I'm just going to mention that on Friday last week we had the county's service awards ceremony, and just judging from the folks who were retiring or still working after 35 and 40 years, obviously something in the county agrees with them very much, because they looked young, vibrant, and ready for the next challenge. So especially want to echo some of the words that Supervisor Larson provided at that event to congratulate the county administrator for his effort to put county employees in a position to recognize that they are vital to our success as a county.
Yeah, I would just add that it's the Service Awards event is one of the favorites for me for the whole year, because you really get to see the people who are here for long term and really do good work for our citizens. So I can't tell them how much I appreciate the work they've done. The only other thing I would add is that we do have our request in for anybody who wants to participate in the high school graduations. It's going to be on Saturday, June 7th. It'll be Jamestown at 9 a.m., Lafayette at 1:30, and War Hill at 6 p.m. And I believe that's at Kaplan
Arena at William Mary.
And I think the deadline for us to RSVP is like the 9th of May or something like that. But please let the schools know which if any of them you would like to participate in. And
I got my ties already.
I'm gonna try to make at least one. I'm not sure how many I can stand up through, but we'll see. But anyway, that's all I have for today. We'll look for reports to the county administrator.
Thank you, sir, Mr. Chair. We have a couple items. I would ask Amy Jarvis to come to the podium while I'm mentioning a few other things. I do want to mention Newtown Tunes, our returns this spring with James City County Parks and Recreation in partnership with Culture Fix. We'll present outdoor concerts. They'll run May 7th, so they're on Wednesdays, May 7th through June 11th, and they begin at 5 p.m. Concert starts shortly after that and runs till about 8 o'clock that evening. Also, we have our Clean Business Awards, and just recognizing anybody can nominate a business of their choice that has adopted green initiatives or enacted environmentally friendly business practices. It's always exciting to recognize that business. They seem to very much appreciate that and look forward to that. And our Clean County Commission is a co-sponsor of that, and so they're recognized with other localities across the peninsula as being a recognition of receiving this award. Applications are available online, or residents could call 757-259-4080, 259-4080 to get more information and figure out how they recognize a business. And finally, I would like to introduce Amy Jarvis, I guess is our, I would say, new Director of Human Resources. She has been our interim director, so she's not new to James City County, but she is permanently in the director's position. You know, last summer I reorganized our Human Resources Department. It created a director vacancy. There were several other vacant positions, so rather than delay the hiring and have another ongoing position that wasn't filled for several months and the workload on our staff there, I reached out to a temporary staffing agency to find an interim human resources director. I feel very fortunate to have found Ms. Jarvis. She was available and interested in working from James City County. She does have an associate's degree from Surrey Community College, a bachelor's degree and an MPA from UNC Greensboro. She began her career in local government as a planner in Surrey County, so maybe she and Paul have a better connection than I knew. Then worked for the city of Mount Airy as their human resources safety director, and worked for the city of High Point, a community of about 1,500 employees, as their safety director, human resource manager, and interim human resources director. She also has over 12 years of experience as a human resources risk management consultant, and so she really hit the ground running here for me and has been a welcome addition to our team. She and I both entered this working relationship last August. I say knowing it was an interim assignment. As we were going through the recruitment process, she had indicated an interest in applying, which I encouraged. Like I said, I had enjoyed working with her. She was effective from early on. And during the interview process, when we asked why she was interested in the permanent position, she responded that our staff and community had really re-energized her. And I see that on a regular basis. She really seems to enjoy serving this community and working with our staff. And so that's been really good for me. As we narrowed our applicants, it became clear to me that Ms. Jarvis would be a good fit for James City County. She'd gained the trust of her staff. She reaches out and works to meet the needs of our departments. She has a great background in human resources and risk management, and she has not shied away from anything that has come up. I really told her it'd be an easy assignment, not a whole lot going on here. Turns out that hadn't been true. It's been maybe not so easy. It's been enjoyable, but it's been a lot of issues that have come up in the time that she's been here. She has been living in temporary accommodations since August, but is working on relocating permanently and bringing her canine companion Bogey with her. Bogey's a cute little dog, not so fond of men, or at least not of me. I hear good stories about Bogey, and so I know he's around often. I do appreciate her approach to problem solving, building up and supporting her staff, and insights into areas to where she thinks we're doing well, and then some areas we can improve. I always want to make sure we are getting ahead of problems, and I think she brings a good experience that can help us improve in some of those areas that maybe we're more at risk. She has a strong work ethic and a commitment to excellence, which is really the cornerstone of our team. We have a lot of staff that really share those same two things. So I would ask her to make a few comments, but I'd also ask while she's getting ready for that you really join me in welcoming and congratulating Ms. Amy Jarvis as our Human Resources Director. Congratulations, Amy.
Welcome. I hope y'all can see me. I was hoping I'd be able to see over the top of this, but I just want to say and follow up a lot on what Scott has said. Is I came in here as an interim, a true interim, and it didn't take me long to realize that there's a lot of energy, there's a lot of good folks, there's a beautiful community, and I just said, well, you know what, I kind of like to, be included and be considered as coming in as the full-time director. And Scott did say to me on the first day that when I got here, he said, Amy, doesn't much go on around here. And there's a lot that goes on around here. So, and I met Mrs. Larson. I remember I met you at the symposium the first day I got here. And we talked to our health insurance, Centera. Yeah, so I've gotten to know everybody and gotten to know the community. And I will say that I am bringing Bogey. As a matter of fact, he's back at the unit right now. They're painting underneath, and he's barking at, he's keeping them company by barking at the men that are doing the painting. And the other animal that I still have is I have a horse. I thought he was 31 years old. I got his papers out the other night, and he's going to be 33 years old in May.
Wow.
So he was kind of one of my concerns about coming up here, but my uncle and cousin used to own him, and they want him back for the grandchildren and the great-grandchildren. So he's going to go, you know how they say greener pastures? Well, he's going to go, he's going to have a new girlfriend, and he's gonna have a lot of other people to pay attention to him and all that kind of thing. So I'm very comfortable with the resolution to that. But I am very excited to be here. I kind of, I see myself as sort of a change agent, but I don't want to make a lot of change quickly. And one of the beauties of being here for the 6 to 8 months that I've been here is I've been able to make a lot of study the staff, study the county, kind of see where we are, kind of see where we've been, and then where we want to position ourselves in the future from an HR standpoint, from an organizational standpoint, and although we don't have a lot of citizen-facing activities that we do, we are always there in the background making sure that our employees are able to do what it is that they do to serve the citizens. So we don't get a lot of public-facing events and that kind of thing. I didn't expect that, Scott, so I'm a little taken aback, but I just want to say I'm delighted to be here. I look forward to working with each one of you, the county leadership and the HR staff and all of our employees. So thank you.
You.
That's all I have.
Okay, we are now ready for closed session. I'll be looking for a motion for the following. Number one, consultation with legal counsel employed or retained by a public body regarding specific legal matters requiring the provision of legal advice by such counsel pursuant to section 2.23711A8 of the Code of Virginia. Number two, discussion of the award of a public contract involving the expenditure of public funds and discussion of the scope, terms or scope of such contract where discussion in open session would adversely affect the bargaining position or negotiating strategy of the public body pursuant to section 2.23711A29 of the Code of Virginia and pertaining to the contract for the joint operation of schools between the county and the city of Williamsburg. And number three, consideration of personnel matter, the appointment of individuals to county boards and or commissions pursuant to section 2.23711A1 of the Code of Virginia, specifically Wetlands Board and Chesapeake Bay Board appointment, Board of Equalization appointment, and Colonial Juvenile Services Commission Board replacement. I'll look for a
Mr.
motion.
Chairman, can I request that we have a 5-minute break before we go into closed session?
Absolutely. We can do that. And,
I'll make the motion to go
do we
into
have a
closed
motion?
session.
Okay, Mr. Stevens, call the roll, please.
Aye.
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 Aye, we're in closed session. come back to open session. Good, there we go.
Mr. Chairman, I move to certify that we only spoke about those items we indicated would speak about going into closed session.
Thank you. Mr. Stevens, call the roll.
Mr. Hippel,
Aye.
Ms. Larson,
Aye.
Mr. McGlinnan.
Aye.
Mr. Eisenhower.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Okay, and I'll look.
I have the following motions, please.
Okay.
The appointment of Mr. Mark Elroy to fill a term on the Chesapeake Bay Board and the Wetlands Board to serve as an alternate member to both of those boards. The appointment will serve a full term and will expire on March 31st, 2030. Can I do all these together? Okay. And then the appointment of Catherine Jeremiah to make a recommendation for the appointment of Ms. Jeremiah to the Circuit Court Judge for a term that would expire on December 31st, 2029 for the Board of Equalization. And then a recommendation for Ms. Taylor Temple to serve on the Colonial Juvenile Services Commission Board. She would be serving the remainder of a term that has been vacated by another member. So that term would expire on June 30, 2027.
Motion, Mr. Stevens, call the roll, please.
Mr. Hippel,
Aye.
Ms. Larson,
Aye.
Mr. McGlinnan.
Aye.
Mr. Eisenhower.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Okay, I have a motion for adjournment till 5 PM on May 13th, 2020. Was this considering we have, do we do that, considering we have that on our calendar for the,
It would be on the 20th, right?
That's after.
it's on the 20th?
It's after.
That's after.
Okay. So I mean, do it, so we adjourn till
13th.
the 13th, okay. Oh,
Motion
I'm
for
sorry,
adjournment?
I'm, mind meltdown.
You're
I'm
right.
thinking. Okay, motion to adjourn till 5 PM on May 13th, 2025 for a regular meeting.
Motion?
So, Mr. Stevens, call the roll.
Aye.
Ms. Larson,
Aye.
Mr. McGlinnan.
Aye.
Mr. Eisenhower.
Aye,
Motion carries.
we are adjourned.